Okay, let's talk about Victorian fashion, but forget everything you think you know. You know, the stuffy portraits, the super formal black dresses. We're gonna peel back the layers on this one. And trust me, what's underneath isn't all prim and proper. It is a wild story, full of deadly poisons, quiet acts of rebellion, and one single machine that literally changed the world. And it was all hidden in the seams of a dress.
So just for a second, when I say Victorian fashion, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Because I'm willing to bet it's probably one of a few really iconic and, let's be honest, pretty intimidating images.
Maybe it's this, right? The image of a woman being laced into a corset so tight she can barely take a breath. That thing was absolutely non-negotiable. It was the foundation of the entire look, all designed to create that famous and often physically brutal hourglass figure.
Or maybe your brain goes straight to those gigantic bell-shaped skirts. I mean, they were so wide, a woman could barely squeeze through a doorway. The sheer size of them is just, it's hard to even imagine wearing that today.
And then, of course, there's the color, or, the lack of color. We have this idea of the whole era just draped in serious, solemn black, mostly because of Queen Victoria's own super long period of mourning.
Now, look, those images, they're not totally wrong, but they are barely scratching the surface. The real story is so much more dramatic. It's a story about killer dresses, about women starting to fight back against being restricted, and about one invention that turned their entire world upside down.
So, let's dive into part 1, the constructed silhouette. Because here's the key thing to understand about the Victorian era. The ideal female body wasn't something you were born with. Oh no, it was something you built. It was a piece of engineering.
And what's so fascinating is how fast that ideal shape kept changing. In the 1850s, it's all about that perfect wide dome, total symmetry. But then, fast forward to the 1870s, and suddenly all of that volume swings to the back with the bustle. And then, by the 1890s, the bustle is gone, the skirt gets slimmer, and all the drama moves up top to these insane leg-of-mutton sleeves. The perfect body was a constantly moving target.
So how on earth did they get that massive skirt in the 1850s? Well, it wasn't with layers and layers of heavy, hot petticoats. It was with a piece of technology, really, the cage crinoline. It was basically a lightweight skeleton made of steel hoops that did all the shaping. It was lighter, it was cleaner, and it was mass-produced, and it's what allowed skirts to get to their absolute biggest.
Okay, part 2. Society's strict dress code. Because fashion wasn't just about what you looked like, it was about a whole set of super rigid social rules. Back then, your clothes were a public statement, like a language everyone was expected to speak perfectly.
And nowhere was the grammar of that language more strict than when it came to mourning. After someone died, especially for a woman, her clothes were dictated by this incredibly detailed etiquette. Your dress told everybody on the street exactly who you had lost and for how long you'd been grieving.
And just look at this timetable. It shows you how specific it was. A widow had to wear mourning clothes for 2 full years, a year for a parent or a child. And this wasn't a suggestion. It was a huge social expectation. Your grief was literally performed for the public through your clothing.
But it wasn't just about social pressure. For a lot of people, like Catherine Ann Edmonston writing in her diary here, the clothes themselves became this really personal, physical connection to their loss. That heavy, dark fabric was a constant reminder of the person who was gone.
With this obsession with getting the look right had a really dark side. And that brings us to part 3, the price of fashion. This is a story of hidden dangers, deadly beauty, and eventually a full-blown rebellion.
So, this was way before we had all the synthetic dyes we have today. So getting bright, vibrant colors was tough. But then, chemists figured out that a compound using arsenic could create this stunning, brilliant green. It was an instant hit. It looked amazing under the new gas lights in ballrooms. The tiny little problem? It was actual poison. And I'm not exaggerating. This is a direct quote from the British Medical Journal at the time. They issued this terrifying warning. The arsenic dye would literally flake off the dresses as dust, poisoning the air. And if that wasn't bad enough, it could be absorbed to the wearer's skin, causing sores, organ failure, just awful stuff.
And it wasn't just the wealthy women wearing the dresses who were at risk. The working class, the people who actually made these things, paid the ultimate price. There was this tragic case of a 19-year-old girl in London who made artificial flowers for hats and dresses. She died this horrible death from arsenic poisoning. The autopsy found that her hands, her fingernails, and even the whites of her eyes were stained green.
So, in response to all of this,
The arsenic dyes, the crushing corsets, the heavy skirts, a rebellion finally started to bubble up. Groups like the Rational Dress Society began to make the case that, hey, maybe our clothes shouldn't be a major health hazard. They started pushing for a more sensible, healthier way for women to dress. And if you look at their rules for what they called perfect dress, they sound incredibly modern, right? Freedom of movement, no unhealthy pressure on the body, comfort. This was so much more than just a new style. It was a radical idea that clothes should be for living your life in, not just for being looked at. But while all these debates were happening, the single biggest change agent of all was quietly showing up in people's homes. It wasn't a new style, it was a machine. Which brings us to our final section, the sewing machine revolution. This one invention didn't just change fashion, it changed, well, pretty much everything.
And this right here shows you exactly why it was such a game changer. To make one man's shirt by hand would take a skilled person about 15 hours. That's almost 2 full workdays. With a sewing machine, that time dropped to around 1 hour. That is not an improvement, that is a revolution.
And that one simple change created this incredible domino effect. Suddenly, you could mass-produce clothes. That meant prices dropped. And for the first time, fashion wasn't just for the super rich. It also freed up millions of women from endless hours of sewing by hand, giving them time for other things, education, jobs, social causes, and it helped create whole new industries, like those massive department stores that started popping up everywhere. And this all happened so fast. You have Elias House patent in 1846. Then, in the 1850s, Isaac Singer, who was a marketing genius, starts selling machines directly to families and, get this, invents the installment payment plan so they could actually afford them. By 1889, you could buy an electric sewing machine for your house. The pace of change was just staggering.
So when we look back, it's so clear. Victorian fashion was so much more than corsets and big skirts. It was this incredible battlefield of ideas, where old traditions were clashing with new technology, where social control was being met with personal rebellion, and with the very idea of what a woman could be was being stitched and unstitched every single day.
And all of this kind of leaves us with one final thought. We might be past arsenic-laced dresses, but are we really so different? What are the hidden rules, the hidden dangers, and the quiet revolutions that are shaping what's in our own closets right now? It's something to think about. Thanks for joining this explainer.